Suzanne Spooner has been teaching Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique for over 13 years. She's worked with thousands of clients, and during her sessions she's come across a lot of information concerning ancient Egypt, extraterrestrials and the gods. And so I'm with her now on her tour in Egypt, where we got to experience some of these sacred locations and temples and so forth that clients have talked about in her sessions. So welcome, Suzanne, to Expolitics today.
Thank you, Michael. It's just a lot of fun to have you here with us on the tour, and I'm happy to talk with you today.
So maybe just for those that aren't familiar with your work or didn't watch our earlier interview, just explain, what is QHHT?
Sure. QHHT is a hypnosis process that was created by the late Dolores Cannon. It stands for Quantum Healing Hypnosis Technique. It's a very unique process where it helps people to find all of their answers within. They can visit other lifetimes, sometimes past, future. They go back to memories in the current life, always directed by that part of them that knows everything, the high self, subconscious, whatever name we want to give it. And that part of them will show them that lifetime that helps them understand this lifetime better. And then we transition them over to that great part of themselves, the high self, and they answer their own questions that they came into the session with deeply and profoundly to find the answers and the healing that will help them move forward in their highest and best way.
Now, that's one of the things I find fascinating about QHHT is being able to access the client's personality or past life memory. They remember what happened to them and they can be caught up in the emotions of that. And then you're also tuning to their higher self, which is playing a role in steering it all. So yeah, maybe just elaborate a little bit on that interplay between the personality, the higher self, and you asking questions.
Right. So that is one of the most amazing parts of my job, is I get to hang out with a lot of high selves, and this part always has so much to share with us. Their personalities as the client, as they're sitting in their chair just talking to me, explaining their life, can be one way, and the personality of their high self can be actually quite different. It's a very phenomenal situation to experience. And that way that their high self presents itself, it might be very lofty and quite detached from a human life. It might be very jovial and joking. Whatever way that comes in, you can kind of think of it as layers, is exactly the layer that that client needs to receive the information from that part of them in the absolutely perfect vibration and frequency that helps them to integrate this information that they are giving themselves.
Now, you've worked with thousands of clients. I mean, do you have an idea of how many of those clients actually remembered past lives in Egypt?
Oh my gosh, I know I should have kept like a scorecard when I began this back in 2012. I don't. It's not uncommon. I would say probably hundreds.
Okay, all right, that's quite a number.
Yeah.
So that means over the years that you've been practicing QHHT, you've gotten a lot of data about ancient Egypt,
Yes.
and people's past life memories. So yeah, so how did that kind of motivate you to put together this course, this tour?
Right. So I think so many people have the goal of getting to Egypt, and they want to understand a little bit more about the pyramids and the temples and their connection to it. So many people feel that they've had lifetimes here. It's something that's on their radar, a lot of times from a very young age. And so when Sarah and I really started talking about doing this tour, my goal was to help the participants find those past lives or their connections to the collective energy that is so profound in these locations, so that they could understand themselves better, get on track with their purpose, go out and just have an amazing life afterwards. They always make a change, and it's always amazing, and I'm pretty lucky to be able to witness that over and over again.
Well, I know the tour began with a visit to the Sphinx.
Yes.
And the third of the three, the small of the three pyramids. And so the Sphinx in particular, I mean, that's something people talk a lot about. So what have your clients told you about the Sphinx? Who built it?
Right.
What does it represent? What's underneath it?
Well, many of my clients have talked about it holding the Ashkic records underneath the temple. The very first session that I did after I learned how to do QHHT was with my best friend, and she ended up having a lifetime in ancient Egypt. Her name was Hursum. She was a boy in that lifetime, and Hursum knew how to go to the left paw of the Sphinx and meld his energy so that he dematerialized and rematerialized underneath the paw. From there, he walked us through the hallways or the tunnels and into different rooms. One room in particular that he talked about had 7 onyx vases, and each vase had information in it that he would be able to access at different times in his life when he was prepared for that. So that was my second session I ever gave, and she and I kept doing more sessions so we could keep exploring Hursum's life and find out more information about those vases. So that was a pretty interesting beginning to my career.
And what have your clients told you about the builders of the Sphinx and the pyramids?
Yes, so the builders of the Sphinx, they say, are extraterrestrial. They say that there's so much more down below the surface than what we know of or what we've been told. So much of this information that comes through is not necessarily in alignment with what is told to us, but we all know that a lot of good information is held back from us. So the extraterrestrial part of that was quite fascinating. They would say that it was Arcturian Palladians working at different times, reforming, congruing the energy of the area. They would say that the actual Sphinx structure was really to get our attention. If it got our attention, it would trigger something within us to help us start remembering.
So the Egyptian pantheon of gods will be Osiris, Isis, Amun-Ra, Sobek, and it's so many others, Horus. Are we talking about extraterrestrials? Are we talking about planetary consciousnesses? What is that?
I don't know if I have an exact answer for that. Thoth has been brought up a lot in my sessions about his connection with both the Great Pyramid, the Sphinx, the layout, the ley lines of these magnificent structures and temples. So, yeah, I think I honestly think it's probably more a work cooperation amongst many species and higher consciousness, because Earth is such a special place, and what happens here really does affect all places within the cosmos. And I think we don't always realize it on a day-to-day level how lucky we are to be in this experience.
Well, one of the temples that really stood out for me, that kind of was a profound experience, was the Sobek Kumumba.
Yes.
In Aswan.
Yes.
And yeah, so you want to tell us about that particular site? What's the significance of it?
So Kamambo is such a special temple because it was made for 2 gods. And that's not usually how these temples are. They're set up for 1 god, but this one is the temple for 2 gods. It's also the hospital temple, the temple of healing. And in the hieroglyphs, you can actually see where they've shown us the instruments they use for surgeries and things like that. It has a very healing feeling to it. I think it's one of the most special temples that there is.
Well, I didn't know about Sobek, the alligator or crocodile god. I mean, when I saw his picture up there, it was, the hieroglyphs, the glyphs concerning him. I was really stunned because I thought, wow, this is evidence of these reptilian beings that were interacting with us, and it described Sobek in very positive, benevolent terms.
Absolutely.
And that's kind of unusual for me because in my exopolitics work, I come across so much information about the evil draconians, the evil reptilians, and to see this temple dedicated to Sobek as well as Horus, that really struck me. So yeah, have you come across clients that have talked about reptilians? What do we need to fear them? Do we need to embrace them? Are they positive, negative?
Really, I found, it's kind of on both realms of of the positive and the negative. And at Kamombo, one of the most beautiful things is it's all about frequency and healing through frequency. And I think we have to really, there's a mindset that reptilians can, they're all these bad beings, but really, I mean, there's balance in the universe. So it would make sense to me, at least, that there's positive and there's negative, as far as that goes. And really, I would say I've had more positive reptilian client experiences. I not had a lot of the, terrible, scary, awful, but in my observations, I always seeing how their lifetimes are relating to their current life and what they need to understand more deeply about themselves. But I don't see that there's a big need for fear about the reptilian races. I think there's just information for us to learn more from.
Now you mentioned that Komombo was a temple dedicated to both Horus and Sobek, and what I saw were a lot of these hieroglyphs showing a multiplicity of the gods all collaborating. So to me, that's kind of shows that in the ancient past we had extraterrestrials walking amongst us, interacting with humanity, doing all the things you were saying,
Yes.
and that there was a certain degree of harmony, which is really amazing for me because I kind of thought of that as something in the future.
Yeah.
But it's like, well, here you have evidence that it's like it happened in the past.
Great cooperation among the races and the beings that were here. And I believe a lot of that history has been taken away from us so that we don't know about it. Because if we're always in this role of duality and fear and worry, it brings our frequency and our vibration down, and we don't think about these great gifts that have occurred on the planet. And if we had that knowledge of species and tribes on the earth working in cooperation together, that would be an example for us. And I think, because of where we're at in timeline right now, that fear and that wanting to butt heads with others drains us of our energy, and it makes us not want to look as deep into that as we possibly could be.
Yeah, I thought it was really wonderful that there was all this evidence of ancient cooperation between humans and extraterrestrials walking amongst us, because that to me is like the ideal of where we today need to strive for and overcome the kind of prejudices, the kind of boundaries we create amongst ourselves, because the future I think is going to be one where there are many extraterrestrials visiting us, and we want to welcome and integrate or assist whatever joint projects might happen without. I think there's a degree of discernment that's necessary, but at the same time, we shouldn't be kind of overly fearful of that.
Right. We're just in such an amazing part of time where we're becoming more aware that this higher vibration and frequency of being is possible, and we're experiencing it, we're feeling it in these temples and in these pyramids. You can feel the different vibrations and frequencies. Some, are maybe, it doesn't really hit me like it's something special. Others, I might be in tears because it feels so loving and kind. Some might be like, oh, I don't even want to go there because, it just doesn't feel good to me. But what we pick up on in places like that, or it could be anywhere, it doesn't even have to be Egypt, is we're picking up on the other timelines and the other experiences that our soul and our collection of souls have had. And I think Egypt is just a huge magnifier of all of that because of its history that it holds and the knowledge and the records that are stored. And I think the ancients, the other species, civilizations, absolutely knew what we'd be going through and was preparing us.
Now, I know that many people have been brainwashed into believing that the pyramids are these tombs for ancient pharaohs and so forth, but we visited the Valley of the Kings, and you want to tell us about the Valley of the Kings and the Valley of the Queens, and why was that the most desirable location for the burial of these Egyptian pharaohs?
So the Valley of the Kings, in particular, is just amazing because it has a lot of these little tunnels, KV 35, KV 40. All these interesting places, tombs that have been discovered over the years. The tombs were amazing, like King Tutankhamun's that was discovered by Howard Carter in the early 1900s, obviously had filled areas with relics and gold and chairs and furniture and of course the sarcophagus. So it was full, it was chocked full of the possessions that they felt was worthy of the pharaoh to bring into the afterlife. Obviously, a place for that pharaoh to be. But then we moved to the Great Pyramid, and as you get into the king's chamber, the queen's chamber, there's obviously nothing has ever been found there. There's no hieroglyphs, there's no material that has been there, no jewelry, no things that you'd find in the other sarcophaguses or the other tombs in the Valley of the Kings. So the Valley of the Kings, I believe, was more, it was purposely set up in a space that wouldn't be easy for people to find as time went on. It was meant to be a very sacred space. And, you have the Great Pyramid, it kind of stands out. And I don't know if that would hold everybody going in there, of course, as sands came down and time allowed for the discovery of it to be more known. And I think that the story that we've been told that it was, a tomb, it just obviously doesn't hold up.
Exactly, and what the highlight, I think, of the tour, or the culmination of it was the tour spent a little bit of time in the king's chamber.
Yes.
And got to experience the so-called sarcophagus. So you want to tell us about that?
Yes, so that's the end of our trip. That's when everybody's made it through all of the other pyramids and the temples, and every day it's our favorite day. There's just so much excitement about all these different places that we're going to, and everybody is experiencing their own personal journey until we get to that last day in the private time in the Great Pyramid. So they're a different person than they were when they began the experiences. So in the Great Pyramid, it's this long walk up into that king's chamber, and you have to put yourself back in time to perhaps when in the subterranean chamber where the Nile water actually still comes up to, maybe the people who were initiating into these higher realms of understanding and knowing would float into that subterranean chamber, doing their chanting or having their supporting people around them, getting them prepared for what was about to happen. And then as they make that long voyage, walking up into that king's chamber, you can only imagine the thoughts that had to be going through their head. And those tunnels are little, and I'm pretty little, but I have to kind of bend down to get through them, and you just have to wonder what those walls have experienced over all this time. And then to get into the chamber, which has perfect resonance. I mean, the circumference, everything just is in such perfect alignment that obviously people who had initiated into these great schools of knowledge, this ancient wisdom, were so highly vibrating and prepared to get into that sarcophagus and do the ultimate, leaving the body, not leaving the body journey to the other side to retrieve the information that they wanted to bring back into the physical body, to share, to know, to expand their own awareness and consciousness.
Yeah, it was very special. I mean, being able to get inside of that
Yes.
sarcophagus and just for a couple of minutes, just to feel the energy. And what I felt was just this amplification of energy. It was just, and I could understand why the pyramids were designed in a way so that initiates could actually undergo this kind of very rigorous meditation training, and the tomb, or the sarcophagus, was kind of like almost, we think of like a university, your final exam. It's like, well, everything you've done, it's all about this final exam. Well, the sarcophagus was the way that initiates could demonstrate that they had mastered whatever it was that they were being taught. And I think that important thing here is that this was connected to extraterrestrials.
Oh, absolutely. So amazing. Everybody that gets into that sarcophagus to get that time of meditation or experience, so many say that they've had different experiences, not one like the other. I have a friend who was up there privately with two other friends, three men, one very tall, one very short, one in between, who said, compared notes after their time in there. And all three said that they felt the sarcophagus actually shrink or expand to their size to fit them perfectly. It's amazing. And it's, I observed the participants on our tour having their moments inside the sarcophagus. You can see so many different experiences and so much gratitude. And it's sometimes I'll be taking pictures while people are in there because the energy really shows up in the photographs. And, sometimes they're distorted, they're blurred, or there's light in different colors going around them or in the sarcophagus. So it is quite the juicy chamber.
Now, one of the gods, Sekhmet, is associated with enlightenment and ascension and developing the highest potential. Now, the Sirius star system is associated with the pyramids. So, is Sekhmet part of one of these Syrian visitors or an extraterrestrial from the Sirius star system? I mean, who is Sekhmet?
Yeah, well, Sekhmet is this amazing goddess. She's like the fire goddess. She's usually shown in a red dress. I just love her. She's very powerful, very strong, feminine goddess. And for our trip, it was actually kind of fun because we got to visit Sekhmet in her amazing beingness and take pictures. And in one of the photographs that I took, there's actually a red light where her dress would be. The photograph before didn't show it, the photograph after didn't show it. It was just for this group. And I think that's the demonstration of how powerful these energies are, and the Syrian flow of energy through her and in that temple is felt before you even arrive. I think people really understand that there's a very powerful feminine energy there, and I think it helps the men that come to understand that a little better. I think it helps women, especially those that have been, pushed down or not been able to be seen for their true greatness, to feel that power and bring that into their being and help shift and change them.
What's the connection between the Egyptian gods and the Sumerian gods, the Anunnaki?
Well, I would have to say, it's another layer. There has to be a complete connection there. I mean, nothing is designed out of order, right? So I think in the Creator's perfection, one group will come in do their work, another comes in to support that, and another one comes in to maybe shift and change. And I think the Sumerians were great knowledge holders, and again, just through time and antiquity, in this great experiment of Earth. It must be just the most amazing playground for those, that are the beings that are on the outside to watch this all occur in real time, so to speak. So I think the Sumerians have had a great deal in the forming and shaping of the energy and the frequencies that are in this area.
One of the things that I've come across in my research is that Earth has been this kind of like patchwork of genetic experiments by different extraterrestrial groups. And so you might have like the Egyptian gods representing one particular group of extraterrestrials doing whatever the genetic experiments were in that area of Egypt. Then you have the Sumerians doing something over there, and other groups doing experiments in other parts of the world. Is that something that you've heard your clients talk about?
Yeah, they will. And, I think what's important to understand about that is what I hear in my sessions from especially the people that are having the past lives in Egypt, ancient Egypt, is that the gods who were extraterrestrials didn't really want to be seen as anything special. They were here to help. They had such great intention, but the humans sometimes would put them on this pedestal, and many times the gods would leave. If they couldn't help elevate the people and not have the people think that they couldn't have the same gifts that they had, there really wasn't going to be much learning from that. And so they would go and or something would wipe the area out and they'd start over again. And history is amazing that way. And I think especially we're entering into this time where these great records, these halls of knowledge, are going to become more accessible as our vibration frequency as a collective comes up. And I think we're going to get amazing understanding of all of this. And a lot of these questions will make perfect sense. We'll have the great answers to them.
Your answer sounds very similar to what the Law of One talks about. Carla Ruka talked about the same thing, that the Confederation of Planets sent representatives to help elevate human consciousness, doing all these things, building pyramids, mystery schools and all of that. But then once humanity started to worship them, then they kind of realized that a mistake had been made, and they withdrew. So, right. I mean, that's fascinating that your clients are corroborating something that many people think is a very accurate.
Oh yeah, picture. Oftentimes it's to the gods lived a long life, and so as I would take a client through this lifetime, they were living hundreds of years, sometimes thousands, and when their gifts that they were offering couldn't be received because that block had been put up, there really was no more for them to do to assist the humans at that time, and they would just go away. Now I do believe that there's some connection that was still there. Probably there were those that could still tap into it and receive it. Maybe it just wasn't on the fast track anymore. And I think that's what's kept the lore and the history alive through the times.
So, going through those Egyptian temples and trying to understand the history of ancient Egypt and other places like ancient Sumeria and even Rome, is that there was a time when the extraterrestrials walked amongst us, that people interacted with them, but for the reasons that you've already described, it became less and less common until it ended, because humanity's evolution was being stunted. So for the last, say, 2,000 years, as far as we know, history says, well, it's just us, right? But now, where do we stand as a civilization? I mean, are the gods coming back, and does that mean that they're going to openly reveal themselves? Is it extraterrestrials?
Well, as you know, when we had that visit to the private visit to the Tutmosis III tomb in the Valley of the Kings, so much of that tomb is about the extraterrestrials that Tutmosis III was in contact with. The depictions are there on the wall, and these amazing stick figures, which are unheard of in the rest of the hieroglyphs. The star language coming behind that, and the frequency and the vibrations were there. So the knowledge was there, and I think I don't know if I had to put my finger on it. I don't know if the gods are coming back in physical form. I that almost sounds too 3D to me. I would, if I were writing the story from the knowledge that I've gathered over my years in this work, I would think probably that our individual consciousness will rise up to know the knowledge and be at one with them, in maybe just a bit of a higher plane, so that it's more like, picking up a phone and knowing the answer of a question. I think everything that is outside is within us. And so I don't anticipate that Thoth is going to show up, in all of this glory. Although I'd be down with that. I'd be very happy for that to happen. But I do think this is about the individual aspects of humanity letting go of fear, because fear holds us down. And I think we're done with that part of our experience, which is amazing. It's such an amazing thing. And as we let go of the fear, then we can really focus on our strength and our knowledge, and that is what unlocks it all.
Now, Amun-Ra is the father god,
Yes.
the sun. So we're talking not about an extraterrestrial, but a kind of solar deity. Now, a lot of people are saying that the sun is probably going to go through some very powerful activity, and it's already maybe beginning in terms of X-class flares, even a micronova, and that's going to have a profound impact on humanity and our evolution. So have your clients said anything about the role of the sun in this modern era?
Well, starting since 2012, when I did the sessions, they would talk about the flash, or a big change very quickly. And that does still come through. I think, when I'm giving these sessions, even me, I want a timeline. Like, is it happening next Tuesday? Will it be a week from Thursday? When is it happening? That's our I think, our Earth perspective. But what the very consistent answer to a question like that is that we're writing the script as we go. And even though I'm told over and over and over again that we are on track, we are going to make the shift, we're going to make this change. If it's a bright sun flare that shifts the poles, it changes anything, creates a sudden knowing within all of us, we're still writing the script. So that's why they'll never say, an exact date of when it's happening. But obviously these changes that are happening on the earth, if you go kind of into an observer mode and not get so personally tied into it, it's very easy to see that we're amongst some very important changes with our timeline and our belief system. And it's playing out right now in front of us.
Well, Dolores Cannon talked about space arks. She
Yes.
talked about humanity being rescued at times of planetary crisis by these space arks. They just popped up all over the planet at a certain period when the need arose. So have you come across any information about space arks from your clients? And again, what does that mean for today?
Right. So they would talk about it. They would say things like, it would be a client having maybe a past lifetime in South America, and the Mayans, all of that, and and they're like, our time is done here, and they would just all be gathered and off they would go to another planet. There's been lifetimes that I visited with clients where they're on other planets and they disembarked to come here, or oh my goodness, or to another planet altogether. So I think that actually is a pretty, I want to say, more common opportunity than what we've been told, obviously. But the space arcs, I think, are I think they're probably here. I think they're probably waiting to see what we decide as a collective, what we're going to do. No, a long time ago, I really gave up my base concept of fear. And I know however it's going to play out is going to play out exactly the way it's supposed to. And I have a lot of grace and compassion for those that are fearful of, what if, something terrible happens and we perish, and, another great flood or meteor hits us. Again, we're infinite beings, and no matter what happens, we're fine, we're good. We're possibly in a simulation anyway. So I don't think we need to get too worried about anything.
Well, right now, I mean, this is an election year in the United States. There's a lot of heavy political events happening all over the planet, Ukraine, Israel, Palestine, and there's possibilities of a second Trump administration. Now, one of your clients gave you some really fascinating information about Trump and being an ascended master. So you want to tell us about that, because that might sound really strange to a lot of people that can't stand him.
Right. Yeah. What a character he is, isn't he? One of the common things that comes up about Trump in my session is he's a disruptor. And we need that. We have to have a disruptor in order to get out of this timeline that of fear and 3D and all of that. And, love him or hate him, I mean, you have to give the guy some credit for being that person and taking on that role. I can't imagine the weight that he or his family must carry. So in 2020, I gave a session to a gal that started talking about him being an ascended master. And, I always, I really am good at being an observer, and, I've got my own personal opinions, but I'm also very, I'm very flexible on seeing how things are going. So I don't get myself dug into one perspective or another. But it was kind of funny because she was pretty neutral about him. But when she started talking in her session about him, it's kind of like, oh, this guy, he's horrible. I can't, ugh, yuck, I don't like him. But he's this ascended master, and you could just see, in her mind trying to put this all together, because it maybe didn't line up with her own personal beliefs about him or about what he represented. I think what he represented is, sometimes hard for people to wrap their heads around, because of he seems to be pretty fearless, and he's not like the other politicians that we might see more clearly now, that can be, kind of bought off and paid for. So for her, when I was giving that session, I put YouTube clips out sometimes of my sessions with my clients' permission. And I was sitting there beside her going, oh, I want to put this out. Oh, I can't put this out. Oh, I want to put this out. Oh, I can't put this out. Because I just thought, either people are going to love this or they're going to just hate this. But she and I talked about it after the session, and she was all go with it. She goes, let's do it. And to this day, every time I get a notification of a comment that comes through on it, I have to brace myself just a little bit, because it's either, oh, I totally get what she says, but it's still sometimes, oh my gosh, how could she say that, he's an ascended master, and I think, what's our perspective of what an ascended master is? It can be pretty messy looking, it doesn't have to be that. And actually that aspect of him has been confirmed several times in my sessions. There's another clip that I have that was, that session was actually on 11/11 of 2016, just days after he originally got elected. And that was such a fun session, because personally, I will tell you, I was kind of still in shell shock. I didn't know what just happened here. Like, you could feel it, something happened, but what just happened? And so when he came in, I think he was feeling that way too. And we, not purposely, but it did come up. We didn't talk about Trump. We didn't talk about the election. And he had a wonderful session, and at the very tail end of his session, he starts talking about Trump, and he talks about Trump being an ascended master, and that Trump as a man, as a human man, would have to decide in this time coming if he was going to rule from his ego or rule from his high self. And the two different experiences would be two completely different outcomes. And at that point, on 11/11/2016, he said he was still kind of going in back and forth. And I think that also, to a degree, kind of explains why people perceive him as being, he said what, and he did this, and they just want to write him off. But as all humans are, we're multifaceted, and we have lots of parts about us, and we're still, he's still having a human experience. He's going to make mistakes like all of us do. But at the end of this recording in 2016, where he's talking about, oh, there's so much potential here, and he's going to be changing the whole system. Everything's got to be shut down. The client comes up a little bit, and he goes, ugh, I don't even like him, which to me is like such great validation of how deeply under hypnosis he was, to be giving the information that his conscious self would never say. I love it when that happens.
But it seems to me that's pretty essential, that, as a political scientist, it's pretty clear to see that the United States isn't really a democracy. It's a plutocracy. It's run by corporations that have powerful lobbies, that influence congressmen who talk the talk, but they walk the lobby route. They just pass legislation that always favors major corporations, especially the military-industrial complex. So someone like Trump comes along, and he's not beholden to any of those corporations. He's his own man. He's a billionaire, and so and they're throwing everything but the kitchen sink at him to get rid of this guy who's a thorn in their plans. But it looks like he's going to succeed. And along the way, he's pointing out, well, the elections were rigged. You've got all these crooked judges. Everyone's controlled by lobbyists. So you look at the big picture, he's actually dismantling the system.
Oh, he is dismantling the system so perfectly. And that the belief, that people talk about is, people have to see it to believe it. And the last several years have been so hard for so many, financially and emotionally. But it's like the dark night of the soul, perhaps, for the world, for our country. And I can tell you personally, I just wasn't on track with him at the beginning. I could not figure him out. And I remember, he kept saying over and over again, fake news, right? And I'm like, whatever. And I was actually with Julia Cannon. We were in China teaching QHHT, and this was back, oh my goodness, 2016 maybe, before elections. And I was talking to her about how we had our interpreters had taken us out, and they took us to Tiananmen Square. And I was chatting with one of our interpreters, and I said, oh, this is where the man held his hand up, and to the tank, and her head goes down, and she says, we don't know about that. She obviously knew about it, and I'm like, what just happened here? And I said, the man, I don't get it really quick. And I said, the man with the hand, it stood in front of the tank. Everybody saw that. Everybody around the world. And she finally says, only the people that lived close know anything about that. If you go into the villages, outside of Beijing, it never made the news. It never was known. They controlled that insurrection moment. And I was really befuddled by that. And Julie and I were walking after that interaction, and I said, can you believe that the Chinese people don't know about that man at the tank. They don't know the truth. Their news didn't tell them. And she looked at me and just so bluntly, she says, how do you know that we get the truth? And I remember going, like, that was a moment, that just, and I'm like, wow. And I think, that when he started saying fake news, fake news, fake news, then I'm like, oh, hold on. I mean, I know repetition. That's part of hypnosis. I know what's going on, right? It's jarring you.
Mm-hmm.
And, I've had a wonderful awakening to all this. I think we're just brilliant geniuses for writing the storyline of the ages, at this moment. And I really am curious if we're going to have an election. A lot of people have opinions about that, but I think a lot of us have really started to look more into the government issues and the corruption, and it's more than any of us would like to digest, but I think it's good that we know about it, and he's probably the way shower of uncovering a lot of this.
So in a way, we're kind of at this critical juncture. Recent history is one of where the governments and representatives are owned and controlled by lobbyists, so the system is totally corrupt. You have fake news media that just spin whatever narrative that corporations give them. But on the other hand, you have this future world of Ascension. You've got the extraterrestrials that are wanting to interact and reveal themselves to humanity. They want to give fantastic technologies. They want to help us achieve longer life. Like a fantastic world lies before us, but it seems that this old corrupt system somehow needs to be dismantled. So where do you stand on, are we heading for this bright new future where the possibilities are limitless?
I believe we are. Now, I believe, the collective of souls have different needs for themselves. So, as some speak, I do believe there's going to be a split. We're seeing it happen as far as I can tell you. COVID was a great accelerator of this, right? Before, maybe we thought we knew where our friends and our families' beliefs were. After, we're perfectly sure where everybody stands, on their beliefs. The ones that, to them, the media is the God, and, whatever they say, that's the way that it is. And it's those that are like, hold the phone. Like, I am not quite sure that what I was taught is really the truth. And if we've been lied to about this, what else have we been lied to? And, we're seeing the, photographs of the giants, that were here, not long ago, 100 and 200 years ago. The bones, where did they go? The Smithsonian, what are they doing with things? The colleges, the universities, the academia, what are they doing with this information? And why are they so radically changing the belief systems of our young people? And, I really do think I'm just obnoxiously optimistic, but I do think something as horrific as that experience was brilliant to help wake us up very quickly and help us to see that we need to question everything. And I think that's healthy. And it's that questioning gives less power to those that were trying to control us. And I think as we become more sovereign and accept who we truly are, that split, the ones that want to remain in fear or be controlled, and those of us that are ready to make that leap, it happens easily. I mean, it's our beliefs, our knowing, and I think we are done with this control aspect to a great degree, and no judgment for those that aren't. I see it in my family a lot. It's just, I honestly believe in the work that I've done, that those souls, just like the souls that are on this other track, are exactly where they need to be for them to learn what they need to learn. So, it feels like a separation. It feels sad because we're not all, on the same plane together. But again, with a lot of grace, you just have to, be centered with everybody's where they need to be, and let's just do this. Let's just expand and see what we can find, and it's fun. It's just fun work.
So, what projects are you working on right now? And the book project, how is that
Yes.
going?
Oh my gosh, this book is taken a while. So Beverly, who's on our tour with us, she's an amazing soul. She came to me back in 2020, and she didn't even want a session. She came because her best friend wanted a buddy to have a session with. Her friend was the one that wanted to have the session. Beverly, okay, I'll go with you, because it was a drive and she wanted a friend. And Beverly's session was amazing, and this is what the book is based off of. Her QHHT sessions, which are amazing past lives. Her first one was so interesting because she told it. It was like sitting in a movie as she described everything that was happening. It was so detailed, and it was an interesting teaching because she is actually a very famous person in history. She was talking about signing treaties, and we could look that up. And I won't say who she is right now, but yet the familial aspect of her was different than what we know in history. So then it's like, well, wait, what do we do with that? But later, as we get through the process, we understand what's happening with that. We go to the high self. It is not the high self. She, in that first session, describes herself as the designer of our reality simulations. And so she is this designer. She's speaking in a very staccato voice, very unlike little Beverly. And she talks about the engineers that implement the designs that goes into the collective. She explains that we are in a simulation, that we perceive ourselves in these human bodies sitting in these beautiful, comfortable chairs. She sees us more as a molecular structure. And she says, if I had to describe it to you, and she says, this isn't even close, but it's closest that your brain can understand, is that you are like each in tubes. And your molecular structures are down there, at the bottom of a tube, but that there's molecular structure that's up above. And sometimes it goes over all the tubes, and that's the collective experience. And then you're having your individual experience. It was a lot to wrap a head around. I think at the end of that first session, the designer asked me if I had any more questions. And I'm like, a million, and I cannot come up with one, because this has been a lot of information. So we did a few more sessions, more information came through. We were able to go back and ask for updates about these projects that she was talking about. She would talk about a molecule being introduced to the collective that she wasn't expecting. It was more from what we call a negative polarity, and that was upsetting everything. Now, as we understand it, it ended up being COVID. That's how we perceived it. And so the designer was working with the engineers to extract that fear molecule, because that's really what it was. And it was getting us off track of the Ascension. And one of the most beautiful things that she talks about is her design of an overlay. And this is like an overlay of 5D and higher. And she explains that she's working on this project to see how we are as a collective at being ready to make that jump. And she says we'll see it as glitches. There's been a couple times, maybe you've had this experience or your listeners have, where you just happen to look up for a minute and things are pixelated. Or all of a sudden you're in a place and the energy feels so good and colors are brighter and everybody's happy. I've had that happen a couple of times, and then it fades back. And she says that's actually an overlay experience where they're seeing how we're doing with it. They take it back, they'll rework what needs to be reworked, and the updates that she gives are amazing. And so Beverly and I are working side by side to produce this book. It has the feeling of the raw material, but in a different voice, sort of. I had to put all of the sessions out on my YouTube channel. They were very well received, but as we decided to make create the book, we decided to pull those off. So because we're getting so many queries about them and questions, and we needed to concentrate on this book. So people can see an example of this. We did a session on Ruben Langdon's Gaia show, Conversations with Extraterrestrials. And you can kind of see Beverly do her thing and the designer's material there. But this book is going to be phenomenal. We do believe there's vibrations and frequencies within the material that as we read it, we haven't had a lot of people read it yet, just between the two of us, we feel different as we, are looking at each chapter and digesting it. And we'll think that we understand what the designer meant about this back in 2022, and we're reading it in 2024 going, hold the phone, that's about exactly what's happening now. So the work seems to evolve with the time. So we're getting close to being done with the editing process, and then we're going to get back as quick as we can.
Right, so can you tell people where they can go to find your website and your YouTube channel?
Yes. My website is SuzanneSpooner.com. All of my QHHT information there. There's a course to teach channeling. There's a free guided meditation, because I always just want people to know how easy it is to tap in and find their own answers. My YouTube channel is just easy to find by going to Suzanne Spooner Official. And it'll be all the sessions right there over all these years, amazing different types of experiences for people to listen to. And thank you for allowing me to share this information with your audience. I know they're amazing because I listen to all of your shows too.
Well, thank you, Suzanne, for being on Expolitics today and sharing your incredible information and thousands of clients' testimonies that you've distilled for us. So thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
You have been listening to Expolitics today with Dr. Michael Salla. Please remember to like, share, and subscribe to this channel. Join or start a conversation in the comments. Take the time to explore the vast library of best-selling books, webinars, and podcasts by Dr. Salla. Visit exopoliticstoday.com.